A North Korean MiG-15 is diving toward an American airbase at 400 miles per hour. Ground crews scatter. Gunners sprint to their positions. This looks like an attack. But the jet doesn't fire. It just lands. The canopy pops open, and a 21-year-old pilot in full North Korean uniform climbs out with his hands raised. His name is No Kum-Sok, and he just handed the United States the most valuable piece of hardware in the Cold War. This is September 21, 1953. Gimpo Air Base, South Korea. American forces have been getting destroyed in the skies over Korea for 3 years by this exact aircraft. The MiG-15 is faster, deadlier, and more advanced than anything the West has. Dozens of American pilots are dead, and nobody knows why. U.S. intelligence has been desperate to capture one intact. Every crashed MiG either explodes on impact or gets recovered by communist forces first. So the CIA launched Operation Moolah. They're offering $100,000 to any pilot who defects with a MiG-15. That's $500,000 today. They dropped millions of leaflets over North Korea. They broadcast the offer on radio, 24/7. Bring us a MiG and you're rich forever. Here's the problem. No Kum-Sok never saw those leaflets, never heard those broadcasts, had no idea about the reward. He just wanted out, and he was willing to die trying. This is the story of the most valuable defection in Cold War history. How one pilot changed aerial warfare forever, and why he can never go home. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what the MiG-15 meant in 1953. The Korean War has been raging for 3 years. American F-86 Sabres are getting shredded over what pilots call MiG Alley. The Soviet-built MiG-15 climbs higher, hits harder, and maneuvers better than anything America has. U.S. pilots are dying, and they don't know why. The MiG is a complete mystery. Soviet secrecy is absolute. Every MiG that crashes in combat is either obliterated or recovered by communist forces before American teams can reach it. U.S. intelligence is desperate. They need to understand how it flies, how it fights, how to beat it. That's why they launched Operation Moolah in April 1953. Print millions of leaflets in Korean and Chinese. Promise $50,000 for a MiG-15. Later increased to $100,000. Stuff them into artillery shells and drop them over North Korean air bases. Scatter them across the Yalu River from bombers. Broadcast the offer into communist airspace constantly. The message is clear. Defect with a MiG and you'll never worry about money again. One problem. Almost no North Korean pilots ever see them. Reading enemy propaganda is a death sentence. Pilots are under constant surveillance, and even if you wanted to defect, how? You fly in formations. Your wingmen have orders to shoot you down if you deviate. Your fuel is rationed to the exact amount needed for the mission. Every flight path is monitored from the ground. It's impossible. But No Kum-Sok has been planning the impossible for years. Born in 1932 in Sinuiju, a port city right on the Chinese border. His father is a wealthy businessman who supported Korean independence from Japan. When World War II ends and Korea splits in two, the family stays in the north. Big mistake. Kim Il-sung's communists take power. Wealthy landowners are the first targets. One night in 1947, No's father disappears. No arrest, no trial. He just vanishes. No is 15 years old. Years later, No will learn his father was probably executed and buried in an unmarked grave. His crime? Being successful before the revolution. No's mother tells him to keep his head down. Stay quiet. Survive. So he becomes the perfect communist. He joins the Youth League. Memorizes Marxist theory. Volunteers for extra shifts at the collective farm. Smiles at propaganda rallies. Inside, he's burning with rage. Outside, model citizen, perfect student, loyal to the party. When the Korean War breaks out in 1950, No sees his chance. The regime needs pilots desperately. Fighter training means education, prestige, and most importantly, access to aircraft. He applies to the North Korean Air Force Academy. Aces every exam. At 18, No enters flight school. The instructors are Soviet officers who speak through translators and treat Korean students like expendable pawns. The training is brutal. Cadets who wash out get sent to frontline infantry units. Basically a death sentence. No watches friends die in training accidents. Watches others get shot for minor infractions. He keeps his mouth shut and his scores high. By 1952, he's flying the MiG-15, the most advanced fighter jet on Earth. The Soviets guard its secrets obsessively. Even North Korean pilots aren't told how the engines work or what makes the aircraft so deadly. They're just taught to fly, fight, and follow orders. And No is good. Really good. He becomes one of the top pilots in his class. His instructors praise him. His commanders trust him. He flies combat missions over South Korea, engages American F-86s and dogfights at 40,000 feet. Never shoots anyone down, but never gets shot down either. He's careful, disciplined, calculating, and the whole time he's planning his escape. But escaping North Korea isn't like crossing a border. The DMZ is the most militarized strip of land on the planet. Every road is guarded. Every citizen is watched. For a pilot, it's even worse. You fly in formations. Your fuel is rationed exactly. Your flight path is monitored from the ground. One deviation and your wingmen shoot you down. So No waits. He watches. He learns the patterns. By September 1953, the war is technically over. An armistice was signed in July, but tensions are still nuclear. Both sides are on hair-trigger alert. No is stationed at Sunan Air Base near Pyongyang. One morning, he's assigned to a routine training flight. Nothing unusual. Just him and a dozen other pilots practicing formation flying. This is it, because No has realized something crucial. During training flights, they fly in loose formations at low altitude. No radar tracking, no ground coordination. Just pilots flying patterns near the coast. If he breaks formation and dives for the deck, he'll have maybe 2 minutes before anyone reacts. 2 minutes to cross the DMZ, dodge anti-aircraft fire, and reach South Korea before his squadron realizes he's gone. September 21st, 1953, 10 a.m. No Kum-Sok climbs into his MiG-15. He goes through the pre-flight checklist like always. Engine start. Instruments check. Radio check. His heart is hammering so hard, he's sure the ground crew can hear it. But his hands are steady. He takes off with the formation, climbing to 5,000 feet. They're flying a standard patrol pattern along the coast. No is in the middle of the formation, perfectly positioned. He waits for the right moment. Then, without warning, he banks hard left and shoves the throttle to full power. The MiG screams as it accelerates past 500 miles per hour. No drops to 50 feet above the rice paddies, skimming the treetops, using terrain to mask his radar signature. Behind him, his squadron is shouting on the radio. No, what are you doing? Return to formation. He yanks out his radio headset and tosses it aside. No going back now. The DMZ appears on the horizon. No can see the barbed wire, the minefields, the guard towers. Anti-aircraft batteries open fire. Tracers streak past his canopy. A burst of flak rattles his fuselage. He's flying so low he can see North Korean soldiers on the ground staring up in disbelief. Then he crosses the line. 1 second he's in North Korea. The next he's in South Korea. He's done it. He's out. But now comes the hard part. Landing without getting shot down by the Americans. Because from their perspective, a North Korean MiG just violated their airspace at combat speed. This is either a defection or a suicide attack. And they have about 10 seconds to figure out which. Kimpo Air Base erupts into chaos. Alarms blaring. pilots sprinting to their F-86s, ground crews diving into bunkers. No drops his landing gear and flaps, bleeding off speed as fast as he can. He's trying to signal surrender, but he has no radio. No white flag, nothing. He just has to hope they don't blow him out of the sky. He lines up with the runway and brings the MiG down hard. The tires screech. He slams on the brakes. The jet skids to a stop in a cloud of burning rubber. American soldiers surround him with rifles raised. No pops the canopy. Climbs out slowly. Raises his hands above his head. He doesn't speak English, so he just smiles. The biggest, most nervous smile of his life. For 30 seconds, nobody moves. Then an intelligence officer runs up, realizes what's happening, and starts shouting, "Don't shoot! Don't shoot! He's defecting!" The soldiers lower their weapons. Someone brings a translator. And that's when No learns about Operation Moolah. That's when they tell him about the $100,000 reward. His jaw drops. He had no idea. None. He risked his life, abandoned his family, and condemned himself to permanent exile for reasons that had nothing to do with money. But the Americans don't care why he did it. They just care that he brought them the MiG. Within hours, the MiG-15 is surrounded by engineers, test pilots, and intelligence officers. They're crawling over it like kids on Christmas morning. For 3 years, this aircraft has been a ghost. Now it's sitting on an American runway, intact and operational. They measure every rivet, photograph every panel, pull the engine and tear it apart piece by piece. What they discover changes everything. The MiG's engine is a modified British design, one that the British sold to the Soviets before the war. The Americans had no idea. The airframe is lighter than expected. That explains its climb rate. The gun placement is awkward. That explains why MiG pilots struggle in close combat. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every design flaw, all laid bare. But the real prize is the test flights. American pilots take the MiG up and fly it against F-86 Sabres in mock combat. They learn its stall characteristics, its roll rate, its blind spots. They develop new tactics specifically designed to exploit the MiG's weaknesses. Within months, the data is distributed to every fighter squadron in the U.S. Air Force. American pilots start winning dogfights they would have lost before. The kill ratio shifts. The MiG-15 is still dangerous, but it's no longer invincible. And it all started because one 21-year-old North Korean decided he'd rather die free than live under Kim Il-sung. The MiG itself becomes a propaganda bonanza. The Air Force parades it across the United States. It goes on display at air shows. Newsreel cameras film it from every angle. The Soviets are furious. They accuse the U.S. of stealing the aircraft. They demand its return. The U.S. responds, "Come and get it." The MiG eventually ends up at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, where it sits today, still in its original North Korean markings. You can walk right up and touch it. But for the men who fought in MiG Alley, that aircraft represents thousands of lives saved. As for No Kum-Sok, his life gets complicated fast. The U.S. awards him the $100,000 as promised. That's life-changing money in 1953, but there's a catch. He can never go home. His mother is still in North Korea, and the regime knows exactly what he did. Defectors' families are sent to labor camps as punishment. No will later learn that his mother was interrogated for months, her property seized, her reputation destroyed. She spent the rest of her life under constant surveillance, branded as the mother of a traitor. No will never see her again. He carries that guilt for the rest of his life. The Americans give him a new identity. He becomes Kenneth Rowe. They enroll him at the University of Delaware, where he studies mechanical engineering. He keeps his head down, blends in, tries to build a normal life. But he's not normal. He's a walking Cold War artifact. The CIA keeps tabs on him. So does the KGB. There are credible threats on his life from North Korean agents. He moves frequently, changes his routine, never tells anyone his real story. For years, he lives in this weird limbo. Free, but not really free. Safe, but not really safe. He excels academically, uses his reward money to pay for school and then some, gets his bachelor's degree, then a master's from MIT. He becomes an aeronautical engineer, which is darkly ironic. He spent his youth learning to fly Soviet aircraft. He's designing American ones. He eventually becomes a professor, teaching engineering at universities for over 30 years. His students have no idea who he really is. To them, he's just Professor Rowe, a quiet guy with a thick accent who's really good at thermodynamics. But no never forgets where he came from. In 1996, more than 40 years after his defection, he finally tells his story publicly. He writes a memoir called A MiG-15 to Freedom. In it, he describes the decision to defect not as a moment of courage, but as a moment of desperation. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just trying to survive. He writes about the guilt of abandoning his mother, the nightmares that haunted him for decades, dreams of being shot down, of being dragged back to North Korea, of watching his family tortured because of his choice. He writes about living with a secret identity for 40 years, being able to tell the truth, always looking over his shoulder. The book becomes a bestseller. Finally, people understand the price he paid. Not just the risk of the flight, but the cost of freedom. No Kum-Sok dies in 2022 at the age of 90. He lived in America for 69 years, longer than he lived in North Korea. He became a U.S. citizen, raised a family, built a successful career. But he never stopped being North Korean. He never stopped thinking about his mother, never stopped wondering what happened to the people he left behind. In his final interviews, he says he doesn't regret the defection. He'd do it again. But he wishes he could have saved his family too. The MiG-15 he flew to freedom still sits in that museum in Ohio, serial number 2057, red star on the tail. Thousands of people walk past it every year. They read the placard, take photos, move on to the next exhibit. Most of them have no idea what that aircraft really represents. It's not just a Cold War trophy. It's not just a piece of aviation history. It's proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run. That freedom isn't free, not even close. That one person's escape can change the course of a war. No Kum-Sok weighed his options on September 21, 1953. Stay in North Korea and live as a slave, or risk everything for a chance at freedom. He chose freedom, and in doing so, he gave the United States the intelligence that would save thousands of American lives. He never wanted to be a hero. Never wanted the money. Never wanted the fame. He just wanted out. Sometimes that's enough.